Welcome to Storylines Live, the only podcast that explores the power and the meaning of the most important story in business. The one that answers why somebody would buy from you, work for you, invest in you, or partner with you. At Vendilli, we call this your capital S story because it defines the very character and nature of an organization. In each episode of Storylines Live, we feature business leaders and storytelling experts who can share their insights and key learnings about the most important story in business so that you can do a better job of sharing your own capital S story. In this episode, we're honored to have Daniel Alphone with us. Daniel is an author. He wrote a great book called Build a LinkedIn Profile for Business Success. And I got to say, Daniel's been on LinkedIn almost since the very beginning, since 2004. And I'm sure there's a story there too. I'll tell you a little bit about Daniel. In addition to writing the book, he's become an expert in how to develop LinkedIn as a powerful tool. Frankly, it's quite misunderstood, and Daniel's going to help us understand better the power of LinkedIn in this message. He's trained thousands of people on how to better use LinkedIn. And he's developed a process, a method that can help leaders reach their objective without cold connecting. I hate that part of LinkedIn, Daniel. Paying for a premium account or advertising or trying to become someone else. That is something that's going on these days, even AI. If your audience is entrepreneurs who want to leverage LinkedIn to get leads and revenues, then he's got a way for you to be organic and reach out. Daniel, welcome to Storylines Live.
Oh, what an amazing intro. I'm glad to be part of the Storyline Live family.
Well, thank you for being here, really. Is there anything in your introduction bio that I missed that you think our audience would benefit from knowing about you?
No, sir. If something happened to me tonight, that should be my eulogy.
Oh, okay, good. Well, we'll dig into that, right? I'd love to know more about that. See, folks, that's storytelling, leaving a little intrigue there. So you think to yourself, well, I'm not going to punch out of this podcast. I got to find out what Daniel's talking about. One of the things we do for those of you who are regular visitors with us at Storylines Live is we always ask our guests of those 4 questions that the capital S story answers. Which is most important to you right now? Buy, work for, invest, or partner. So Daniel, for you and your journey as a LinkedIn expert, which one of those 4 questions is most important today?
Well, today I would say partner with me.
Mm-hmm.
And for a long time, it was buy from me.
Can you give the audience a sense of why it was buy and why it's now partner?
Most of my business is based on referrals. So people I worked with would mention my name to someone, and then I would work with the founder or with the service provider. What I found is that partnerships, long-term partnerships, the only kind of partnerships I consider, could be smoother, better for all of us, more profitable, and have a higher quality and better service than, let's say, walk-in clients. This is the reason I'm thinking about maybe adding an additional partner, but that's the reason I was considering.
Oh, interesting. That's a very interesting answer. Well, certainly a lot of our audience is interested in the first one of those 4 question answers, the buy. And I like the way you've phrased that because long-term relationships, and we've talked about this a lot over the history of the podcast, transactional sales occur in business and they're necessary. But the most valuable types of purchases are relationships, right? Long-term engagements, mutually beneficial situations, right? Well, speaking of mutually beneficial, I always, as the host, have my view of what makes a great story, the capital S story. But I always want to know, what's your take on storytelling? How do you view the art of storytelling?
Cool. So could I tell you a story about that, Paul?
Please, that would be awesome.
Great. So I was a sales person, a quota carrying salesperson, and one night LinkedIn helped me slash my sales cycle by 30%.
Wow.
And the reason it happened is that it helped me identify the right person within the organization. And that is something you remember used to take a lot of time. And LinkedIn was like, a kid entering a candy store. This left me so much more time to prepare, to research, to grow the relationship. And that's the moment I decided to see what's under the hood and to specialize. And I'm very glad I did, because since we started this Storyline Lives episode, thousands of people have joined LinkedIn. Every second poll, 3 people sign up.
Wow, I didn't realize that. I would say, Daniel, when I talk about LinkedIn and at our firm and in our work with Story, we are in LinkedIn quite a bit. One person said to me one time, LinkedIn is a social media platform where the adults hang out, which I don't know how true that is. I mean, there are some old people on TikTok these days, but I think the point he was trying to make is this is a place where there's more business focused, serious conversation. And the flip side of that, I think, is people sometimes think that LinkedIn is boring, but I'm gathering from you that that's not a view that you share.
LinkedIn has changed a lot, but it's where business happens, and I wouldn't necessarily consider it a social media channel per se.
Oh, okay.
It's a different, like, if you think of you mentioned TikTok.
Yes.
There's no way Vindili or my consultancy would be successful on TikTok without uploading videos.
Yes.
There's no way you could be a successful YouTuber or anyone on Instagram unless you upload content.
Mm-hmm.
However, LinkedIn is the only platform where to be successful, you don't necessarily have to share.
Wow.
If you have high quality content, by all means do it. If you love sharing and that's part of your strategy, that's fine. But if we Google the entrepreneur's name, then their LinkedIn profile often will top the list.
Yes.
So imagine I visit your profile and I wanted to reach out to you, and I see that you, Paul, and we share at least one mutual connection. Let's mention just Michael Burnswijk. So if I could, if I know my network, I could reach out to Michael and explain why I want to be introduced to you and ask Michael a simple yes, no question. Do you know Paul well enough? Do you feel comfortable making that introduction? And if Michael says yes, then we will have a meaningful conversation thanks to Michael's name, not my name, which is meaningless, but that person's name. So you could consider LinkedIn to be some sort of back office. Mm-hmm. Yes, there's the front office. You can play with that, but it's not the only game in town. One of my clients was successful without sharing anything. People couldn't believe it, but it worked.
Wow. And, we really want to unpack that, because what you said there is profound. And I was joking just a little bit about TikTok. It absolutely has its place, right? But one of the things about many of the social media platforms and the way you put LinkedIn in a different category is what you just described is not really possible on those social media platforms. You just described a scenario where I don't have to write something or post something, and I'm using LinkedIn in order to create a connection. Wow, that's great. Related to the question I asked you a couple minutes ago about your take on storytelling, we always like to get a little bit of the backstory of our guests as well. So you shared the one story about the success that you had, but of all things in the world, Daniel, how did you decide to become a LinkedIn expert? What led you down this path?
Pure chance is not an interesting answer, but I guess it's part of the answer.
It's the truth, right?
Truth, and I don't want to say anything else. I did get an invitation, as you said, in early 2004 from someone I trusted, and the word trust is important here. I decided if that person was on that new thing, then maybe I should check it out. And what happened along the way is that I started having friends, and those friends asked me to train their sales force. And at one point I decided to specialize. Most of my colleagues created agencies and did all sorts of things. And I decided I wanted to remain and specialize within the LinkedIn territory, and even within LinkedIn being organic, that's even a deeper or narrower niche way to niche down. And I'm very happy I did.
Wow. That's great. Well, you know what? Could you give the audience a little bit of a sense there of what you mean by organic on LinkedIn? I think most of our audience understands that social media platforms make their money by selling advertising. And, we have clients where we're running LinkedIn campaigns, and perhaps as a measure of the value of LinkedIn, those campaigns can be quite expensive. And you're talking about helping people have success on LinkedIn without buying the advertising. Share a little bit with our audience about what that looks like, please.
Excellent. So if you own a small firm, an SMB, and you don't have a multi-million advertising budget, then there are many ways for you to leverage the LinkedIn platform without paying the platform, without a premium account, and without an advertising. It could work if you're a Fortune 200 company. Of course, it has its place, but it's not necessarily the only way to go. If you're a service provider, if you're a solopreneur, if you have a team of 10, 20, 30 people, there are at least 5 free ways to leverage the LinkedIn platform. And most people basically only think of one way. There are more ways to play this game than advertising or spamming more people.
And I suspect, Daniel, that the one way that most people think of is what I would consider the greatest source of spam in my LinkedIn inbox was just connecting with people. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. There's a cartoon by the Marketunist with the incoming invites and Paul, the minute you accept those people invitation, 30 seconds later, you get a pitch.
That's right.
It doesn't matter that the pitch is now AI rewritten or something like that. They don't know anything about you, but they have the cure to your ills. It doesn't make sense in real life. You don't walk into a bar and propose unless it's a Disney movie.
Thank you. I mean, this is one of the things, being a long-term expert in the marketing and PR field, I will say all the time, you don't go into a bar and propose marriage to somebody in the first 10 minutes. And I think this is one of the failures that especially a lot of B2B companies make when they think they need to up their game in advertising or PR or, a lot of decisions that people make. And I think this is what's great about LinkedIn, require consideration and getting to know and trust and like the company and the person before you have that kind of a conversation, right? You can't just immediately, if I'm thirsty and I want to buy a drink, it's a different kind of consideration that goes into that conversation, right? I just walk into a store, see something I like, and I buy it. But a lot of the relationships that lead to business on LinkedIn are a lot more complex, right?
Absolutely right. You recently interviewed Steve Walsh, and you
Yes.
discussed the fact that people buy from people.
Exactly.
And you mentioned the transactional when you're thirsty. Yes, that's a transaction. You get a bottle and you move on. But if you in the long term business, then the fact you now can spam 10,000 people within a friction of a second does not necessarily mean it's the right move for you to do it, because it will hurt your name.
Yes.
It will hurt your business. It will hurt your brand. You're an expert on crisis and crisis management. The best prevention is much easier than cure.
Well, you've obviously done your research on me, and you're absolutely right. That is true. And I guess I would say related to that the best approach to LinkedIn is to have a strategy. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. Like any tool, it's a great tool. But if you start playing with the tool without having an idea of who you're looking for and what you'd like to achieve, or what's your capital S story, and would you like people to invest in you or partner with you or hire you or buy from you, there could be that your strategy needs to change because you pivoted or you're now interested in something else. So forget about the tool, forget about the new shiny objects out there, and ask yourself simple business 101 question. What are you in the market for? What you're looking for? And how would you, Paul, define success?
Wow. That's really profound, Daniel. And folks, we're going to dig into that in a minute, right after we take this quick break. Don't go away. We're with Daniel Alphone, and we are digging deep into how to get the most out of LinkedIn, especially organic use of LinkedIn. We'll be right back. Welcome back, folks, to Storylines Live, the only podcast that explores the power and the meaning of the most important story in business. The capital S story, the one that answers why somebody would buy from you, work for you, invest in you, or partner with you. In this episode, we're honored to have, I would consider one of the top experts in the world on LinkedIn, Daniel Alphone, and he is here helping us understand the story we need to share on LinkedIn, especially organically, to make the connections and conduct the kind of business that we expect we should be able to do on LinkedIn. So, Daniel, before we took our break, we were having a very interesting discussion, and I had started you down a path. You said there are 5 things that most people can do on LinkedIn that don't have to cost them money. And they usually only think of one, which is reaching out to people and making connections. Can you share some of the other ways that you've learned about that are good?
Excellent. So let's start with meaningful introductions. Meaningful introductions, a way for us to be introduced to the ideal person. And first question we need to ask ourselves is, who is our ideal client? Going back to the earlier topic you mentioned, unless we know the answer to that question, LinkedIn will not save us. We need to be able to answer that question. When we know who our ideal reader is, then we could get introduced to that person. Advanced search is very powerful on LinkedIn. It's free. It takes a couple of minutes. You could narrow down and decide only people who live in Pittsburgh, only people with the CXO title, only people with A, B, and C, only people who went to University of Miami. And there, if you know your network, you could be introduced to that ideal prospect of yours.
Mm-hmm.
There are other ways to do it. If you mentioned content.
Yes.
If we produce high quality, top of funnel, educational content, or basically content that answers your prospects' early questions. Not should I buy from your firm, but do you understand what I'm facing and what crisis I'm going through? Then you know the answers to those questions. And if you help and guide your prospect by showing them how to move from point A to point B, even if it's a baby step, they will trust you more when you show them that there is a whole point C and D down there. Wow. So you don't have to sell. Right. You do have to guide them. You do have to show them that you know what they're struggling with, and answering or providing educational top of funnel content, ideally content that is evergreen, is a great way for people to discover you and then go to Vendili and then check you out and then say, let's jump on a call.
Wow, that's great.
Other ways to leverage it would be events, advertising, which you know a lot more about, and also posting in a certain way. But the first two are probably the most important ones. Don't be the person who connects and then sells to your new connection. It's been passive for at least a decade.
Wow. Okay, so obviously connections, the right kind of connections, introductions, creating high value content. You know, in my experience, Daniel, I think people will say, oh, I know I'm not supposed to make cheap connections, for lack of a better term. That means my only other choice is creating high quality content. I don't have time for that or whatever. So you mentioned there are 5 ways. What are a couple other ways to do it? By the way, I disagree with that content comment, but I'd like to know what you think the other ways are for people to get the most out of LinkedIn.
When you consider the fact that the single most frequent action LinkedIn users perform on the platform, according to LinkedIn statistic, it's visiting other people's profiles.
Okay.
And that goes, there is no other platform where this happens, because if I visit TikTok, I will check the content. I would be there for the reel, for the video, for the content. And on LinkedIn, it's different. You could be very successful because your ideal prospect is not necessarily asking themselves, what are you sharing? But are you the right answer to my questions?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not the right answer, it almost doesn't matter what you shared. So sharing is an additional layer, but it's not the only way to play the game. And producing high quality content is, as you know, time consuming.
Yes.
And it's not easy for anyone. But the simplest question to ask ourselves is, do we have high quality content that we created not for the sake of LinkedIn, but for our clients?
Yes.
For example, on our website. So people become blind to the fact that they have resources and case studies and examples and downloads and stuff like that on their website,
Mm-hmm.
repurposing that content and maybe chunking it differently or slicing it differently or making it more appropriate for LinkedIn. It will take 30 seconds, 60 seconds, but it will give more eyeballs the possibility to discover that content. So it doesn't have to be, a white page and the writer's block and what do I come up with? You have high quality content, identify it and ask yourself, have we shown the LinkedIn users that piece of content?
Wow, that's great. That's awesome. Well, the fifth thing you mentioned that we kind of went over was events. Now,
Yes.
Facebook Live has been around for more than a decade and certainly probably longer than that. And of course, LinkedIn Lives are around too. Can you talk a little bit about events on LinkedIn and how those work in terms of your top 5 ways to use LinkedIn?
Excellent. Even before that, if you're in the space of B2B, then
Yes.
it could be that trade shows used to be very big are still way the industry gathers. Maybe
Yes.
it's only a yearly event. Maybe it's
Right.
a San Francisco event around June. If you know that your budget is dedicated to one trade show, then try to remember that your actions on LinkedIn could take place ideally 4 to 8 weeks before the event.
Ah.
The resource that's shortest is our time. And if you have a booth to man, you barely have the time to breathe. But what you could do is identify people you'd like to meet during the event itself and speak with them a month before the event and try to book as many solid meetings as you could. So your calendar shows a number of interesting meetings. And what you could do within minutes is basically move either just be introduced to that person, shake hands, maybe take a business card and have a follow-up, or someone you've already spoken with, someone who you started working with a couple of weeks ago, and then they walk into your booth or you meet them in the business lounge and it could lead into significant business.
Wow, that's great. And as we know from statistics as well, in-person events are coming back finally, 5+ years outside of COVID. So that's a great way to leverage your LinkedIn digital presence before an event. That's fantastic. Daniel, every time we have somebody on who's an author, I like to ask them what inspired them to write the book. Obviously, you're an expert. What was it that led you to say, you know what, I got to put this in a book?
You may not believe this story, but it is true. I visited Amazon 2013 and there was an ad saying, "Are you an author? Click here." And then I realized I could simply upload a file and publish my book. And so I said, you know what? Okay, it would take me 2 weeks to put on in writing everything I know about it. And lo and behold, maybe 18 months later, it happened. And I wanted to have a capsule or like try to put everything in writing and and keep it there. And the idea was to have 12 simple steps of making your profile customer friendly. If we break it down into 3 simple questions, 1, Paul, who's your ideal reader?
Mm-hmm.
The person you'd like to partner with you, hire you, buy from you, or invest in you.
Right.
2, what action would you like that person to perform once they visit your own LinkedIn profile? And 3, are you making it as seamless and simple for them to understand that this is the way to go?
Wow.
And we are responsible for lack of another term, we could consider our profile as a story. What story are we telling the world?
Yeah. Wow. That's great. That is really great. So, Daniel, you've given us a lot of great information so far in this episode, but specifically when you're working with your clients, um, how does that process work? What's a typical client engagement for you?
First steps would be I would ask a lot of questions about their business. I would digest everything I find on their website and LinkedIn and social channels. And then I would basically show up and have a series of business questions. And that would help me, Paul, understand if the client is ready to work with someone like me or not. And in some cases, they're moving through some transition, or the company has just been, they need some time to decide what the next step is. And I would basically tell them that this is not a good time to work with someone like me or with myself. But when you know the answer to that questions, I'd love to be considered. And some of them, head back to me 6 months later, and the longest time was, I think 5 or 6 years later.
Wow.
And I almost forgot about it, but they were not ready because it was a regulated industry. They couldn't do lots of things. And then when something happened, someone remembered, and I was amazed by that. So series of business questions. And the last part would be trying to understand if they're performing any actions, any systematic action on LinkedIn, what sort of actions are they performing? And the answers vary from nothing to John is doing this and Jane is doing that. And we need someone to maybe suggest a structure or a method and work in like a company, not just 2 or 3 silos.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So, it's developing a strategy. I think a lot of people will say, I need to do better on LinkedIn. I need to fix my profile. Well, that might be part of it, right? But that's not all of it. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. When you know the answer to the basic business questions, it makes life easier. And probably the best time to consider LinkedIn is when you know the answer to those questions.
Mhm.
And if you don't know the answers, then LinkedIn will not save you. And you need to have a hard time deciding what success looks for you.
Yeah.
And it could change, in 2 weeks or in 2 months. But unless you answer that question, then you could succeed, but it would be random. And my clients are not in the market for LinkedIn metrics or followers or impressions. They're in the market for profit and revenues, and that
Results.
requires
Yes.
simple business strategy.
Well, that makes complete sense, Daniel. I love asking this question as often as I can. What brings you the most satisfaction in your work?
I think the ability to meet people I would never meet otherwise is where you're based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm based south of Tel Aviv, Israel.
Right.
In what other world could I bump into you or work with you or chat with you? Like this is, I know my kids would look at me like a boomer, but I'm still excited by this opportunity.
Well, likewise, Daniel. This has been great spending time with you. Such great suggestions. How can people find you if they're interested in following up?
Thank you very much, Paul. DanielAlfon.com is the place to go. ALFON.
Great. That's wonderful. And folks, we'll put that in the show notes. Daniel, it's been so great to have you on this episode of Storylines Live. And I also want to say thanks to our audience for hanging with us. Daniel's got a great story, and I hope you've got some great ideas today about how to improve your story on LinkedIn. We'll see you next time in the next episode of Storylines Live, the only podcast that explores the power and the meaning of the most important story in business, the one that answers why somebody would buy from you, work for you, invest in you, or partner with you, your capital S story.